Next on Unsolved Mysteries. A 21-year-old woman is killed by a single shotgun blast. The authorities say it was suicide, but her parents have convincing evidence that someone else fired the gun. In Canada, an elusive sea monster called Ogopogo is finally caught on tape by 3 different people, or so they say. How did human bones end up in this Kentucky stream, and whose are they? Forensic anthropologist Dr. Emily Craig is brought in to solve the mystery. And the day before Molly Bish disappeared from her lifeguard station, her mother saw a suspicious man lurking in the area. Could he have abducted Molly? 5 fascinating mysteries, some just waiting to be solved. I'm Dennis Farina, and this is Unsolved Mysteries. Roanoke, Virginia. At 7:53 p.m., a single shotgun blast rips through a quiet neighborhood. 21-year-old Ray Ann Mosser is pronounced dead at the scene. She has a shotgun wound to the chest.
When officers arrived at 7:57, they found a shotgun lying on the trunk of the car, pointed in the direction of where the young lady would have been standing. She had dated a young man who lived in that house nearby.
Pretty heated argument.
It was his car that she was lying beside.
As she stormed out, the last thing she said to me was, "What do I have to do to prove my love to you? Kill myself?" And then she ran out the door.
You didn't come to the door when you heard this shotgun blast?
No, sir. No, sir. I didn't go outside. I didn't even look outside. If there was anybody outside with a shotgun, I was going to stay inside. I feared for my life.
After questioning Ray Ann's ex-boyfriend, the police find no evidence of foul play, and her death is ruled a suicide. Ray Ann and her boyfriend had broken up, and 3 witnesses said that she threatened to kill herself. But Ray Ann's parents believe that they found evidence proving that she was murdered, and they want an investigation.
When our daughter was murdered, she was charged and convicted of a crime she did not do to herself. And the power within me and my husband both is to find out why, who, and what happened.
This definitely was not a suicide, and I really don't care what anybody thinks.
When they examined police reports, Ray Ann's parents began to discover evidence that cast doubt on suicide as the cause of death. Ray Ann's car was parked directly across the street from where she died. They discovered her car door was wide open, music was blaring from the radio, and her key was still in the ignition. She seemed to have left the car in a hurry. The police found the 12-gauge shotgun lying on the trunk of the car. Her parents believe that if Ray Ann had shot herself, the weapon would have fallen to the ground beside her body.
How long was Ray Ann's arm?
29 inches.
Okay, 29 inches, right there.
Ray Ann's arm measured 29 inches, but the distance from the trigger of the shotgun to the muzzle was 36 inches.
My arm length was right close to my daughter's arm length. So I took a broomstick and measured it out to be able to push that trigger with my thumb and to be able to get it in after we'd seen the body diagram. I couldn't reach it.
There's no way.
She couldn't have pulled that trigger and shot herself.
On the night of Ray Ann's death, authorities told her parents there would be an autopsy. 2 weeks later, Ron and Ann discovered that it had never been performed or even requested.
When I found out the autopsy was not performed, I was shocked.
The Mossers had Rayanne's body exhumed. Finally, 6 months after her death, an autopsy was performed by Dr. David Oxley, the original medical examiner.
The anterior chest corresponding to the wound seen at the previous examination.
According to Oxley's report, Rayanne was killed by a contact wound to the chest, meaning the muzzle of the gun was against her skin. In addition, powder burns were found on Rayanne's left wrist. After the autopsy, the medical examiner declined to change the ruling of suicide.
There was nothing matching. Things weren't adding up right, so that's where we started back for another opinion.
The Mossers contacted Dr. John Butts, the chief medical examiner for the state of North Carolina. His conclusions differed significantly from the findings of the autopsy.
It seems that suicide is extremely unlikely. I could see that the muzzle of the weapon was several feet from her body at the time it's discharged. The appearance of the powder on her hand indicate that that hand was close to the muzzle of the gun to discharge. Perhaps grabbing at the gun, perhaps holding the gun. Now, whatever was at the other end of that gun, I don't know.
Based on Dr. Butt's finding, the medical examiner officially changed the manner of death from suicide to pending. Still, there was no investigation.
We knew when we read Dr. Butts's statement, it had to go on until we found out what happened.
The Mossers set out to get a third opinion. They contacted Dr. Vincent DeMeo, one of the country's leading forensic scientists.
When I received the material that they had, well, I think the case was screwed up. The police had a preset notion as to what had happened, and they just didn't follow through with an investigation. The medical examiner should have performed an autopsy. He should have been suspicious as soon as he saw the pattern of injuries. It's not a contact wound. She couldn't have inflicted it.
With the help of an assistant, Dr. DeMeo showed that it was physically impossible for Rayanne to have shot herself in the chest.
This is the closest that the muzzle was to the body. So if we move it even further away, she'd have even greater trouble getting to the trigger. But if we move it to the closest, and then if she tries to reach, look what happens. As she reaches, the body rotates, and there's no way she can get to the trigger and yet have the gun pointed almost directly at her right chest. What this means is that somebody else pulled the trigger. It's possible that the reason her left hand was adjacent to the muzzle at the time it was fired was that she had grabbed it and was attempting to push the gun away at the time it was fired.
Again, the Mossers asked for the investigation to be reopened, and again, their request was denied.
We was working with a Commonwealth attorney that just would not help us. He was stonewalling us. He just would not do anything. He just was sitting on his buns and wasn't doing anything, you know.
The Mossers next contacted R.J. Breglio, a ballistics investigator. He tried to figure out if Rayanne could have accidentally discharged the gun by dropping it on the ground or hitting it against the car in anger.
The butt test is a test to see if by dropping or slamming the butt against the floor, when it is cocked, if it could fire. I performed this test many times with the shotgun, and I could not get it to discharge. In my opinion, I don't see how it would have landed neatly on the trunk of that car. I think it would have slid off to the ground in whichever way it happened to fall.
Again, the Mossers sent their new evidence to Donald Caldwell, the Commonwealth attorney, and requested that the case be reopened. His only reply was, "I am in receipt of your letter."
I made a promise to my daughter before that casket lid was closed. I told her, I said, Rayanne, if this is not what it looks like, if it takes me the rest of my life, I'll find out what happened to you.
3 years after Rayanne died, the state medical examiner changed the manner of death to undetermined. There still has been no investigation, and the medical examiner and Commonwealth attorney declined to be interviewed for this program. If you have any new information that might help solve this case, please log on to our website at unsolved.com. Next, the incredible tale of a monster called Ogopogo that just might exist in a lake in British Columbia. Lake Okanagan in the Canadian province of British Columbia. For centuries, it has been the reputed home of a mysterious water beast that resembles a sea serpent. The lake is 79 miles long and in some places 800 feet deep. A lot of room for a monster to make itself at home. In the 1700s, local Indians called the beast Naitaka, or lake demon. They often sacrificed small animals to appease the creature. 300 years later, many locals still believe that the sea monster is real. They've even given it a new name, Ogopogo.
I saw it back in 1937. We were facing the lake at the time, and there's this head of something or other swimming around out there, and we were all convinced that it was the Ogopogo.
Very big. It was very scary.
Oh, about 2 feet out of the water, the head part, and the head itself was round, and then the kind of a neck part went down the water, and it had a great big long tail.
Like all you could see though was just a little bit of a hump, sort of, just coming out of the splashes and stuff, and it went on for a little bit. And like we saw it, and then we didn't know what to do. And then it went under, so we just got out of there because we were like scared in a canoe.
Hundreds of sightings of Ogopogo have been reported, but no film footage was ever captured until 1968. That year, Art Folden and his wife were driving next to the lake when they noticed something strange.
We seen something in the lake near the shore. And I said, hey, look, just jokingly, there's Ogopogo. I said, I'm going to stop and see if I can get a picture. I stopped filming every time it dove under the water. And as it reappeared, I began to film again.
Yeah, it's Ogopogo, I tell you.
The film shows a dark object diving, reappearing in a sequence of moves that indicates that it's moving out from shallow water into deeper water.
The pine trees along the shore are about 25 feet tall. The dark mass in Art's film is estimated to be 40 feet long. 12 years after the Folden film was made, a group of vacationers thought they too had seen Ogopogo. One of them, Larry Thal, had a home movie camera.
I was taking pictures of the kids and the wife, and bingo, all of a sudden the Ogopogo, supposedly, whatever it may have been, appeared on Lake Okanagan, and I was right there with my camera. It was a strange sight in the water.
Played in slow motion, the Thal film shows intriguing details.
Larry's film shows how the animal swims. It shows the speed and the massive waves that it creates. It actually shows that it has some form of appendage that seems to pop up every now and then. But the interesting thing again is that the animal that Art Folden shot and the animal that Larry Thal shot, they're basically the same size. They're very large creatures. And in Larry's film, we're seeing a creature at least 40 to 60 feet from head to tail, no doubt.
9 years later, 78-year-old Clem Chaplin showed his son Ken an inlet where he thought he had seen Ogopogo. Ken took his video camera and staked out the area. It paid off. What Ken taped was a creature that appeared to be hairless, greenish in color, spotted, and about 15 feet long, less than half the size measured in the Folden and Thal films.
I saw its features very clearly as being snake or lizard-like, no fur hair, and you can see the body thrashing behind it, and then brought its tail section out of the water. Dad and I were stunned into silence, and then Dad turned to me and he said, You know, if that tail hit a man, it'd probably kill him. And I agreed. That was our impression as to size. It appeared swimming parallel to the shore and swam right past us at maybe 60 to 75 feet away.
Ken's video made headlines. Time magazine and many other newspapers carried the story of what appeared to be a new Loch Ness-type monster. Experts were called in to analyze the video.
It was not a hoax. There was nothing in there that gave us the impression this was fabricated in any way. It was a live, living animal. The discussion revolved around the two species most likely, and that is a river otter and a beaver. Ogopogo could exist elsewhere in Okanagan Lake, but in our view, this particular video was of a beaver.
You know, the largest recorded beaver in the interior is 4.5 feet long. Now, it's 75 to 100 feet away. I just can't see Dad and I being very impressed.
On this side, we have a still photograph taken from the video recording by Mr. Chaplin. On this side, we have a color photograph of a beaver with its tail held vertically in the air just prior to a tail slap. The two photographs seem, for the most part, to be mirror images of one another.
Ken disagrees. He says the creature he saw was 15 feet long, not 4 feet like a beaver.
I've asked myself thousands of times, is there a possibility I could be mistaken? And I just can't see where I could be.
For those who want to call it a beaver, I'll say no way. An otter, I can't buy it. Miniature Ogopogo, in all probability.
Experts may disagree about Ken's footage, but there is still no explanation for the 40-foot-long creature seen in Art Folden's film, or the similar one churning up a wake in the Larry Thal footage. And hundreds of other sightings attest to the presence of something unusual in Lake Okanagan.
I would be delighted to find that Ogopogo really existed in Okanagan Lake, and I would encourage everybody to keep not only their minds open, but their eyes open when they're in the Okanagan. Who knows what really exciting wildlife encounter that they may enjoy.
Is Ogopogo real? Well, the Canadian government thinks so. It even issued a postage stamp depicting an artist's conception of Ogopogo. Coming up, a renowned forensic scientist helps identify a murder victim from just a few bone fragments.
I told you before you had
A bitter argument erupts on the streets of Covington, Kentucky.
Because that's our money.
After a night of drinking, Diane Washer and her husband Jimmy are at it again.
I'm so tired of fighting with you about this.
Look, there are two names on that account, your name and my name, and that makes it our money.
Diane Washer and Jimmy Washer that evening were fighting over money and fighting over the fact that she had just received a $10,000 SSI settlement due to her bad back. As he approached her and they got into an argument, she struck him with the phone on the pay phone, called 911, and by the time Covington police got there, Jimmy Washer had already left.
Call?
Yeah.
Diane disappeared and police immediately questioned her husband Jimmy.
Jimmy Washer was my #1 suspect, primarily because he hadn't reported her missing.
Head and eyes straight forward, feet on the floor in front of you.
And I had asked Mr. Washer if he would consent to taking a polygraph in reference to his wife.
Yes. Did you cause the death of Diane Washer?
No. The test was ruled inconclusive. So some of what he was answering was truthful, some wasn't. There wasn't enough credibility to his answers to totally erase Mr. Washer as a suspect.
3 years passed. Outside of Covington, deputies searching for an illegal marijuana field came across something else.
Looks like a skull.
A crushed human skull and 7 other bone fragments were found in a creek bed. Covington police brought in Emily Craig, one of the country's leading experts in forensic anthropology.
From here, it looks like blunt force trauma.
I was able to determine that the bones hadn't been there that long. The end of the long bone still had some remnants of soft tissue, and the bones had kind of a greasy feel, which indicates the postmortem interval really hasn't been that many years. And my initial estimate of the time since death was between 12 and 36 months.
Another one, there's another one. Oh, look, there's bones all over the place.
We did a line search of the area. We started where the bones had been found and basically worked upstream. Once we got all the evidence back to the lab, then we were able to get a better biological profile of the victim. She was female, she was white, just a little over 5 feet tall, and I also was able to determine from the bones of the skull that she had sustained massive head trauma at the time of death. There was one particular bone that was intriguing, and that was a bone from her lower back. This particular bone showed a lot more arthritis, some bony lipping and changes that were just not consistent with the rest of the skeleton. So I was able to offer an opinion that this individual suffered from back pain.
From their missing persons files, police find a match for the profile, Diane Washer. Shortly before she vanished, Diane injured her back in a traffic collision.
When they called me and said they found my mom, I totally went into shock. I mean, I kind of knew she was dead by that point. But like I said, I carried on hope. Being able to bury her was great. It did help a lot.
When the discovery of Diane's remains was made public, an informant came forward. He said a local house painter, Larry Freeman, was responsible for Diane's death.
This is Diane Washer right here.
When police brought in Freeman for questioning, he confessed. He said he and Diane got drunk together and then went joyriding. He lost control of the car and Diane was ejected from the passenger seat.
When the vehicle finally came to a stop, he ran back to her, saw that her hair was blood-soaked, and realized he had probably killed her. It was at that point that he took her down to an area where he was raised, where he felt comfortable in, threw her into the creek.
Larry Freeman pleaded guilty to manslaughter and received a 20-year sentence. This mystery is just one of hundreds that Dr. Craig has helped solve. But some of her cases cannot be closed without additional information. And maybe you can help. Barron County, Kentucky.
What's this?
It all began when two teenagers were returning home from exploring caves.
What kind of bones? Oh, that's a human bone.
In a roadside dump, they discovered fragments of a human skeleton. The county coroner called Dr. Craig to the scene.
Basically, all we had when we first started was a pair of red jeans with the human leg bones still inside.
Okay, here's a fibula.
Okay.
See another arm bone and shin bone.
Dr. Craig, I think I found the skull.
The skull is the best indicator of race and sex. You look at the brow ridge, you look at the nose, you look at the chin, the cheeks, just the general shape.
The victim was a white female in her early 40s. Cut marks on one of the bones indicated she might have been stabbed to death.
Let's start collecting this. The left tennis shoe or sneaker, whatever you want to call it.
Dr. Craig hoped that the victim's clothes might match a description in one of the local police department's missing persons files.
When I got these remains back to the lab, I was able to do a very detailed study, and within a very short time, I found a file that almost exactly matched. Age, race, sex, height, time since death were indicative, but absolutely positive were the fact that this victim was wearing red jeans, white tennis shoes, and a button-down blouse.
The victim was 42-year-old Nancy Daditzman. Before she disappeared 2 years earlier, she had lost custody of her 5 children in a bitter divorce. Heartbroken, she had come to Kentucky for a fresh start. Nancy vanished after her car broke down in Bowling Green.
She was planning on traveling I-65 north to meet a male friend of hers in the Indianapolis, Indiana area. We was able to verify that it was not possible that he would be a suspect as far as this case is concerned.
The hillside where Nancy's remains were found was 30 miles from where she was last seen. Police believe that only someone familiar with this part of Kentucky would choose this place for her body.
Identifying the victim is the first step in solving the crime. We've done this first step. Now we have to find out who did it.
Update. There are new developments in this case. Here's one of our staff with details.
The 10-year mystery of Nancy Daddysman's death received a major break recently when an inmate already serving time in Indiana for another murder confessed he had killed Nancy Daddysman as well. David M. Bell told authorities he was high on methamphetamine when he picked Nancy up in his car, struck her with a pipe, stabbed her, and dumped her body. Bell is currently serving a 65-year sentence for his previous murder conviction.
Coming up, a young lifeguard disappears in broad daylight, and her mother believes she was face to face with her abductor. Warren, Massachusetts. Population 4,800. For the Bish family, it was the perfect getaway from the urban violence of their old Detroit neighborhood.
My husband and I thought, let's move to the country and find our peace and raise our children.
Molly Bish was only a year old when her family moved here. 15 years later, she landed her first real job as a lifeguard at a nearby pond.
Molly was very proud to be a lifeguard. She worked very hard for that, and she did get this position at the Warren Pond. It's a beautiful location, but it's surrounded by woods, and it is somewhat isolated.
It was Molly's 7th day on the job, and her mother, Maggie, drove her to work. 3 hours later, she received an alarming phone call.
No, she's not. She's at work.
I got a phone call from the local police who said that there had been no lifeguard all day and that Molly's belongings were on the beach, but there had been no Molly.
Excuse me.
Maggie rushed to the pond. She found her daughter's sandals, chair, and lunch sitting on the beach, but there was no sign of Molly.
It's hard for me to describe that sinking, hollow feeling you have as divers are looking for your daughter, as dogs are combing the woods, and police officers are searching and interviewing people. And I almost immediately began to think that something really horrible happened.
There were no clues left behind. Molly's chair, her lunch bag, her first aid kit, and the two-way police radio was just right there, intact, undisturbed. So we had no clues whatsoever.
Nobody there. Maggie was convinced her daughter had been abducted, and suddenly she realized that she may have seen the man responsible. It was at the pond the day before Molly disappeared.
We pull up at the pond, and there's a vehicle parked in the parking lot right next to our car. There's a man sitting in there smoking. I look at this man. He doesn't nod or greet me. I just felt uneasy. I did not want to leave Molly with this man.
Maggie escorted Molly all the way down to the beach and expected the stranger in the late model white car to be gone when she got back.
Lo and behold, I think I've been gone a reasonable time. But this man who is in this vehicle is still there. I'm very upset that he's still there. So I lock eyes with him. I am giving him a stare, trying, I guess, to maybe scare him away. He returns the stare and just boldly stares at me. just cocky as all. He just squinted his eyes and he stared at me and just kept smoking, and he didn't seem to care.
Fearing for her daughter's safety, Maggie waited for the man to leave. The following day, Maggie once again went with her daughter to the swimming hole. This time, the man was nowhere to be seen. Instead, there was a truck unloading sand for the beach.
When I seen the sand truck, I realized that they are businessmen in town, and I felt that I could leave Molly and it would be okay.
But Maggie never saw Molly again. The police investigation focused on the man in the white car. The sand truck driver had seen a similar car in the parking lot just moments before Molly and Maggie arrived. On the other side of the pond is a cemetery. A worker there also saw a white car later that same morning. A path leads from the graveyard to the swimming hole.
And it's my fear that this person parked at that path, went to the pond, and had taken Molly through that path into his car and out of the cemetery and down the road.
A composite sketch based on Maggie's description produced no solid leads.
This is the...
Desperate for information, Maggie and her husband took action.
We came up with the idea an email chain would be a wonderful, explosive way to make more than one person, get this picture and keep sharing it with others.
35,000 people were emailed pictures of Molly. A website devoted to finding her received thousands of hits. But a year passed, and there wasn't a single lead.
Miss Boylan, thank you so much.
Maggie contacted sketch artist Gene Boylan, who had worked on the Unabomber and Polly Klaas cases. Gene agreed to try to create a more accurate drawing of the man in the white car.
When Maggie came in to work with me, what I tried to do, and what she was willing to do, was to talk about the positive aspects of her relationship with her daughter, which were plentiful.
When she finally could fit into my shoes, she'd have...
It allows for that sense of relaxation, and then with that comes new information.
For 9 hours, the two women chatted as Gene carefully sketched a portrait. Finally, the drawing was complete, but Maggie still felt that there was something missing.
And the way he held that cigarette the whole time.
I stayed up fairly late that night, using my own hand as a model, creating the image of the hand holding the cigarette, and then added that to the drawing. And I think that was just sort of the finishing touch that really brought everything into focus.
Well, what do you think?
When I saw the completed picture with the cigarette, I thought instant fear. I mean, it was him. The eyes, it was this cockiness, it was this look.
We want this person to know that we will never stop searching for her, and that we will never stop searching for him. I'm very angry, and that anger is going to drive me on forever. I will not stop.
Update. 3 years after Molly Bish disappeared, her remains were found about 5 miles from Warren Pond. This case is currently open and active. There are no suspects, but there are several persons of interest. There is a $100,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of whoever took the life of Molly Bish. San Antonio, Texas. On a previous program, we brought you the intriguing legend of the Alamo Treasure. In 1836, as Texas fought for her independence from Mexico, 189 men made a courageous stand against 6,000 well-trained Mexican soldiers at the Alamo. Some believe that at the height of the battle, the defenders hid a cache of gold and silver at the bottom of a well.
The only way they preserve it is to all stick together and fight the battle out to whatever outcome it had. The reason why it's remained there is because everybody died.
Ground radar testing in the plaza of the Alamo confirmed the presence of something about 13 feet underground. Frank Buschbacher, believed he had located the long-lost treasure. After obtaining permission from the city council, Buschbacher and a team of archaeologists began digging in front of the monument. A week later, 4 feet beneath the surface of the courtyard, they found fragments of Native American pottery, the bones of butchered animals, and primitive cooking utensils. Each relic had to be carefully unearthed and then properly cataloged.
While we haven't been able to move as quickly as we ever originally intended to, the reason is very good reason, because we found something no one expected to find here, and that's intact 18th century materials.
These items are a valuable treasure in themselves, rare artifacts that help piece together a history of the Alamo from the 1750s up to the final battle nearly a century later.
Here we have grape shot. We think this is from the actual battle. We also have this that looks like it is the headpiece to a Mexican soldier's hat. This would signify his unit and that sort of thing. And this may well be part of a saber from the battle.
As the archaeologists inched closer and closer to the unidentified object on their radar screen, their spirits were lifted by the discoveries they had already made. But optimism turned to disappointment. They found no trace of any treasure. Yet some remain convinced that it still exists somewhere deep beneath the Alamo. Next, the I-70 serial killer. He's quick and he's deadly, and he may be responsible for 9 murders. Someone is murdering young women in the Midwest along Interstate 70. The authorities need your help to stop him. 26-year-old Robin Fuldauer of Indianapolis, Indiana, wanted more than anything to marry and start a family, but that would never happen. Robin was found shot to death at the store where she worked. 23-year-old Patricia Smith and 32-year-old Patricia Majors worked side by side at a bridal shop in Wichita, Kansas. Just 3 days after Robin Fuldauer was murdered, both women were shot to death in the back room of the shop. 3 weeks later, 24-year-old Nancy Kitzmiller of St. Charles, Missouri, was shot to death in the boot store where she worked as a manager. 4 murders in 3 different states, separated by more than 1,200 miles. At first glance, they seem to be random killings. Yet each took place at a shopping mall just off Interstate 70. Coincidence or something more sinister? Raytown, Missouri, another link in the deadly chain. The Woodson Village Shopping Center near an access road to Interstate 70. At 6:30 p.m., a local auctioneer noticed a stranger walking into his auction house. He looked around briefly and then walked out again. Tim Hickman, who owned a video store, watched the man cross the parking lot and pass by his store. Minutes later, Tim heard a gunshot. He reached his front door just as the man was disappearing around the corner. A grocery clerk also saw the stranger as he climbed the embankment to an Interstate 70 access road and vanished. Meanwhile, Tim Hickman went next door to the gift shop.
I kind of looked in through the door and I didn't see anything. And I was calling, ma'am, ma'am. And I stepped forward a couple more steps and then I saw her legs sticking out of the other room.
Sarah Blessing lay lifeless in a pool of blood. Police believe that the Raytown tragedy was connected to the earlier shopping mall killings. A multi-state task force was set up. Lab tests confirmed that all 5 women were killed by the same gun, most likely a semi-automatic .22 caliber pistol. That gun was also linked to the murder of 40-year-old Michael McCown of Terre Haute, Indiana. He had been killed in a shopping mall ceramics store near Interstate 70. There were now 6 victims. The most promising lead came from the murders of Patricia Smith and Patricia Majors at the bridal shop in Wichita.
Can I help you?
Stay calm.
What do you want?
Calm. Let's just walk in the back room.
I've got money. Do you want money? Anything you want.
Come on. Are you the only one here? Is everybody else here?
No, nobody else here.
Where's your cash register?
It's over there. You can have whatever you want.
Just go in the back room. I'm just going to tie you up, all right?
Just do what he says.
Police did get one good description of the killer. It was from a customer who walked in just minutes after the 2 women had been murdered.
Anybody here? Hey. Hey, man, I don't know what's going on here, but I need to. Wait a minute. I want you to come in the back room with me. Look, man, I can't. What are you doing? What are you doing? I just told you to come in the back room. I can't come in the back room. I just want to get out of here. I didn't see nothing. I don't know nothing that's going on here. I just want to
shut up and get the hell out of here, then, and don't call the cops.
Using the customer's description and other eyewitness accounts, a police artist created this aged composite of what he may look like today. The suspect is between 5 feet 5 inches and 5 feet 9 inches tall. He would now be in his late 40s or early 50s. The suspect is described as neatly dressed and clean cut. He appeared to be almost in a trance, as if he were thinking about something else.
It's important for the audience to know that a serial killer never stops. They may stop for a period of time, but they never stop completely, and they will always start up again.
There were 3 other additional murders in Texas that police believe were the work of the same killer, bringing the total number of victims to 9. If you have any information about the I-70 killer or any of the other cases we've profiled, please log on to our website at unsolved.com.